Cersei Lannister could taste the metallic tang of fear in the stale air of Maegor's holdfast long before she admitted it to herself. It mingled with the damp odor of half-melted tallow and wilted roses, clinging to her silk sleeves like invisible thorns. A queen who had once ruled a court of perfumed courtiers now found even her private corridors shrunken, the torchlit shadows mocking her every measured step. The distant roar of King's Landing shouts, clanging shutters, the occasional shriek when torch-bearing gold cloaks beat back half-starved beggars, rose and fell like a sickly tide beyond the walls. Nights had grown louder since her father withdrew to Casterly Rock months ago. Small folk who once trembled at the lion sigil now spat the word lion, with a gutter howl that made her guards tighten white-knuckled grips on their spears. Cersei hated the city for that. It was supposed to be hers. Father had called it the Seat of Crowns, and she had believed him, sauntering through airy red-brick passages as if born to the Iron Throne's very spikes. Yet iron had no loyalty. It cooled beneath any who dared sit. Ares had shriveled upon it. Robert had slumped. Tommen, sweet little pussycat Tommen, had died before he could warm it. And now the chair raised blisters on Cersei's own hands no matter how careful she was to cushion them with gloves. She stood by a narrow arrow slit, peering down at the Blackwater, dark as spilled ink beneath a waning moon. The river looked tranquil, but dusk concealed every hidden eddy, just as the red keep's masonry concealed cracks that only masons saw. She pressed 2 fingers to cold stone, imagining fissures radiating outward. Ser Kevin's last letters from the rock, meant to reassure her, had soured in her memory. King's Landing is a firepot, he warned. A single spark, and the wildfire you so fear will be the least of your worries. The raven that bore his counsel had arrived weeks ago, but the parchment still lay unburned in her jewel box, creased from rereading. Tonight another spark kindled. A rumor whispered to her by a trembling page. Your Grace, the Blackfire cellars are empty. Empty. The crown's last casks. Pawned to quiet Sel's words and buy food for a citizenry that cursed her name, gone. Gold cloaks who took their pay in debased copper had begun accepting arrears in whatever they could tear from fleeing merchants. The page had swallowed at a purple bruise marring his cheek. He had encountered one on the stair. Cersei dismissed him with a measured nod, but when the door closed she allowed herself a single curse, low and vicious, shaped like her father's favorite oath. Tywin Lannister would never have let scum overrun his treasury. Tywin would not have permitted the ragged scent of revolt to seep through mortar and disturb a night's sleep. And yet, a voice whispered, Tywin is not here. Father had died on the privy, red-faced and surprised. There were no ghosts more pointed than that one. She could still abandon the city and let it devour itself. The notion had sprouted a month ago. First a seed, then a sapling whose roots spread each dawn she woke to coffers lighter and streets angrier. Cersei imagined a gold-trimmed litter borne by picked men, moving west along the gold road at dawn while the bells of Baelor's September told some false alarm behind her. If the city wanted a villain, let it gnaw its own tail. She would not be here to hear it scream. A tap at her chamber door drew her from reverie. Ser Boros Blunt entered, helm tucked beneath a fleshy arm. Forgive me, your grace. The Kingsguard's cheeks puffed with each breath, sweat slick in torchlight. A delegation waits in the outer hall, guild masters demanding audience. They speak of bread riots in Cobbler's Square. Riots again. Cersei glanced at the window, seeing not torches but torches broken, staves upraised, the pale faces of the starving. Once such scenes had amused her. The people were clay for her power. But clay, too long fired, snapped. And what did the Queen of Ash rule? Only ash. I will speak with no guild master tonight, she said. Double the watch on the gates. No looters cross the city walls while I breathe. Blunt bowed, waddled backward. Cersei lingered by the arrow slit. The moon's reflection on the Blackwater rippled as if laughing. Let them starve, she thought. Let the cobblers and lamplighters tear one another for crumbs. Yet even that cruelty tasted dull in her mouth. Cruelty needed audience. To rule a graveyard was to rule no one. She folded her arms. Somewhere beyond the city's creaking docks, Father's gray and scarlet banners snapped atop Casterly Rock. She pictured the rock exactly as it had been when she was a girl. Marble pillars, echoes of harps in the Hall of Heroes, chambers smelling of cedar and old books. Her mother had loved its western balconies, where sea wind tousled golden hair. Cersei had once loved them too, racing Jaime along sun-washed corridors. Now she dreamed of them, a fortress of memory sealed behind gold. Choice hardened in her chest. She would return to the rock, and this filthy metropolis could drown in its own ordure. A lioness saved her strength for worthy hunts. She did not throw herself among scavenging dogs. Her first task, protect her son, the last ligature binding her to the throne. Aegon, crowned less than a summer, slept in the nursery below. To abandon him would be to abandon her line. Yet to drag an infant across a restless realm risked daggers on every mile of road. Even Lannister gold could not bribe every highwayman between Blackwater Rush and Rusty Hinge. But Cersei recalled a lesson father had taught with cold clarity. Gold purchases oaths. Fear keeps them. She would leave behind false whispers, a web of lies to mask her flight. The spider was gone, the little wolf sniffing at Mrs. Up North, but tongues still wagged for coin. She would seed rumors of an illness, the queen closing herself in prayer while Grand Maester Balabar brewed potions. No one must suspect motion until her litter passed the last outer garrison at Hayford. After that, let ravens flap and peasants howl. She would be days away. Casterly Rock. The name alone felt like a gate unbarred. Cersei turned from the arrow slit and called for ink. The next dawn broke scarlet, a smear upon copper clouds. Grand Maester Balabar waddled beneath its light carrying a warmed draught of dream wine, chin wobbling in worry. The queen feigned interest, nodding as he prattled of poppy strength. When he withdrew, unaware that his draught would be poured unfinished into a rosebush planter, she summoned her steward, Osfrid Kettleblack. "Ride tonight," she told the cell's word, voice a low purr. "Take 6 men loyal only to me. You will escort a closed litter, plain painted, nothing to draw the eye. It will bear my most precious cargo, my son. Tell the grooms his destination is Fair Isle, if they make bold to ask. I trust you recall what becomes of lips that loosen." Osfrid's grin showed mismatched teeth. "Aye, milady." She dismissed him and breathed easier. One thread secured, but a tapestry of escape required many knots. Wagons of provisions disguised as overland trade, letters to Craighall and Case requesting young lords present themselves at the Rock for strategy council. And bribes, always bribes, slipped to river ferrymen whose silence was measured in silver stags. By midday she held audience, flanked by Blunt and Meryn Trant in tarnished white cloaks. Guild masters bowed, pleated hats clutched, voices quavering about shrunken grain allotments. Cersei granted them scathing half-truths. Grain caravans were delayed near Duskendale. Lie. The Iron Bank had delayed release of lone silver, a truth bent thin. She spoke of rationing and duty to crown, ignoring their shifting eyes that read doom in every gilded pillar. When they were ushered out, she ordered a cask of Arbor Red opened and drank 2 cups to steel her nerves. At dusk, as sun died in crimson behind the city's crenellations, she walked the nursery herself. Aegon, whom Septa Margot still called His Grace, though the realm's tongues wagged with other names, slept swaddled beneath red velvet. Cersei brushed a kiss against his brow. The child gurgled, chubby fists flexing, unaware of history turning around him. Would he remember King's Landing? She did not know if she wanted him to. "Your first memories shall be of golden halls," she whispered, "not gutters slick with filth." 3 nights later, as bells in the great September told 7th candle hour, the queen's litter rumbled through the mud gate disguised as a noblewoman bound for Rosby. For lanterns dangled from its corners. One blew out in a gust, leaving the procession half-shadowed. A parchment affixed to the gatehouse recorded the litter's bearer as Lady Meredith Saren. The guards signed it without reading. Cersei peered through slits in the curtained panels, heart drumming as the Blackwater's night fog swallowed the city's silhouette. She glimpsed the charred hulk of a cog run aground after the wildfire battle, mast canted like a snapped bone. Tyrion's victory, she recalled sourly. Tyrion, would he twist in exile when he heard of her flight? Or grin, free of sister's shadow at last? Past the river, the gold road uncoiled westward beneath wan stars. Hooves clopped, wheels groaned, and behind them King's Landing dimmed into a smear of citadels crowned by the red keep's tower jutting like a bleeding fong. She felt neither sorrow nor triumph, only relief, like unclasping a corselet after tourney. Above the litter's roof, Ser Boros rode gloved in mail that glimmered dull red. They traveled by forced march, torches hooded low, pausing at hasty camps far from village hearths. By the fourth sunrise the air smelled of sweetgrass, and drum-taut nerves settled into a determined rhythm. Cersei allowed herself a luxury, a silver mirror, to check the pallor in her cheeks. Lines had deepened around mouth and eyes, but the lion in her gaze burned undimmed. Aegon traveled safer than she, swaddled in blankets within a secondary litter guarded by kettle-black men. He fussed seldom. Perhaps infants sensed destiny and kept quiet when mothers needed silence. They crossed the tumblestone at Deep Den, paying passage with a purse stamped lion gold. There a raven awaited, bound from King's Landing with news. The guild masters had found the royal apartments empty. Septa Margot was under questioning. The small council, such as remained, had barricaded itself in the Tower of the Hand. A riot at Cobbler's Square had spilled into Flea Bottom, and bakeries burned. Cersei read the note without betraying satisfaction. Let the throne court its next fool. She penned reply instructing Qyburn, still hidden in cellars beneath the Great September, to spread rumor that she withdrew to Storm's End to raise an army against northern rebels. Lies within lies, a spider's skein. 9 days' journey from the capital, the gold road skirted foothills where summer wheat rolled like soft dunes. On the 10th dawn, Casterly Rock appeared on the horizon, a jagged silhouette of colossal stone rising sheer from the sunset sea, banners pinned by chill wind. Crimson silk snapped fiercely against quartz walls, Lannister colors free of soot and dung. Cersei inhaled sea salt, tasting memory. Gull cry, clanging or hammers, the hush of echoing lion tunnels. The procession wound up the sea road switchbacks, litters swaying. High-arched gates yawned wider than she recalled, flanked by stone lions whose maws dripped green lichen. Trumpets sounded. Guards clad in bright, enameled breastplates formed ranks. Her uncle Ser Kevin, silver hair stirred by wind, descended from an overlook to kneel as she emerged. "Your Grace," he greeted. "Not my lady, not niece." He saw the iron in her poise. "You have kept the rock well," Cersei replied, glancing along banners to parapets where watchmen saluted. "Now it must keep me." Kevin rose slowly. "Word reached us of unrest." His gaze cut toward the child litter as grooms disentangled it from wagons. "Is King's Landing truly lost? For now it is merely adrift." She smoothed travel-stained silk. "But I shall not founder with it." Her voice carried steel sharper than Jaime's sword. "Here I will gather power anew. Here the realm will learn a lioness still rules." She turned to the sea wall, where sun-slashed waves shattered against rock. Far beyond the horizon lay the city she had abandoned, a prize for vultures. Casterly rock stones thrummed beneath her boots, ancient, unassailable. Her heart answered their resonance, beating a slow, measured drum that matched the pulse she had felt in Maegor's holdfast, the pulse of fear, now reborn as promise. That night, the first emissaries from House Liddon and Crakehall broke bread in the Rock's feasting hall. Torches gleamed off gold-veined pillars, and the murmur of courtiers trembled between tapestries depicting lion victories centuries old. Cersei wore crimson velvet cinched at the waist by a belt of mother-of-pearl lions. She sat not upon the Rock's ceremonial seat, but on a plain high-backed oaken chair at the table's center, equal among lesser lords yet undeniably their axis. She spoke little. Instead she watched. A ripple of uncertainty traveled each time her golden gaze settled upon a knight or lady's face. They were weighing rumors, queen in flight, crown in peril, dragons whispered in the east where Daenerys Targaryen still gathered cell sails, and measuring their futures against the surety of a Lion Queen's favor. In that silence, the hall's hearth popped. Sparks ascended like fireflies. Cersei thought of wildfire casks hidden in the city she had quit. A single ember might ignite them all. She sipped wine, letting the warmth curl through her belly. When she set the cup aside, she smiled with a predator's patience. Embers travel on wind, she mused. I am the west wind now. The next fortnight unfolded as quiet storm. Ravens winged east with sealed scrolls bearing Cersei's lion sigil. They flew to Old Town, seeking Reach mercenaries who might prefer Lannister gold to Tyrell roses, and to the Green Fork, where Fry sons weighed grievance against crownless northerners. They darted south toward the Dornish marches, teasing prospect of future alliances in exchange for crossbowmen. Within the rock, forges kindled. Smiths hammered steel billets into new pattern crossbows she insisted upon, compact, deadly, designed from sketches left by Qyburn before his flight. Crates filled with bolts tipped in black iron. Her father's treasuries had slumbered during the capital's lean months, guarded by prudent Kevin. Now they woke, coins clinking like restless serpents. Every dawn Cersei carried Aegon to the western ramparts where sea spray salted their hair. She pressed the infant's hand to the parapet, letting him feel the fortress's heartbeat beneath waves. You are heir of lions, she whispered. Beyond these cliffs lie fields ripe for harvest and men ripe for fear. The child cooed, content. News seeped westward faster than ravens could fly. King's Landing had indeed broken into riot. Cobbler's Square burned 3 nights. The great September spells pealed, calling for peace that would not come. The Lord Commander of the City Watch was rumored slain. His own men trampled him on the steps of the Street of Flower. Meanwhile, banners of Stannis Baratheon, pale blue and fiery heart, had been sighted at Windwater. The Onion Knight ferried supplies along a coast now unguarded. Cersei read these tidings in her solar, lips curling. Let Baratheon slog through mud, she told Ser Kevin. By the time they reach the city, they will find nothing but cinders. Kevin studied her, gray brows knit. And what shall we offer the realm, if not the capital? Stability, she answered without hesitation. Gold, bread. I will show them a lion queen who feeds her cubs while dragons and stags devour one another. The realm loves the hand that fills its bowl. She tapped a parchment map with a ruby-studded finger. The Reach has grain, the Rock has coin. Together we purchase allegiance. Then we march east and reclaim the ashes. Autumn crept into the Westerlands, gilding oak groves and speckling vineyards with copper leaves. Cersei hosted harvest feasts for minor bannermen, carving boar while musicians played ballads of Lon the Clever. Wine flowed, tongues loosened, yet each lord left with a purse heavier than a rival, and an unspoken pact sealed by her unflinching gaze. In private, she trained with a new swordmaster, Ser Morland Heatherspoon, a gaunt man from Ashmark who favored half-sword techniques. Cersei wielded a lighter practice blade, keeping wrists supple. She did not expect to duel. Kings and queens commanded from thrones, not lists. Yet mastery bred confidence, and confidence commanded men. When the Rock's courtiers whispered that their queen sparred at dawn, awe quickened their tongues. One crisp morning, a raven from Riverrun arrived bearing crimson wax broken with trembling hands. Jaime Lannister had escaped northern captivity. Word placed him somewhere along the Trident, heading south with a small escort. Cersei gripped the scroll so tightly wax crumbled beneath her thumb. Jaime, her mirror soul, her golden half, was riding home. She dismissed her handmaidens and pressed her forehead to cold window glass. Memories flooded, teenage laughter threading hallways, golden hair mingling on velvet pillows, whispered vows to rule the world together. She had left him behind when she fled King's Landing. The guilt of that abandonment had lodged like a thorn behind her ribs. Now fate offered absolution. She dispatched riders with fresh horses and sealed orders. Jaime was to be welcomed at each Lannister holdfast, his passage fed and guarded, his presence concealed from Raven spies. She penned the letter herself, wax stamped with roaring lion, and in its margins, in ink paler than tears, She wrote, "Come quickly, love. We have a kingdom to win." As weeks bled into months, Cersei's court swelled. Dispossessed knights from the Stormlands, merchants whose ship Stannis had impressed for war, and hedge wizards driven from Old Town Starry September by zealot fires found patronage beneath lion banners. Each signed parchment oaths to Queen Cersei of Casterly Rock, words gilded in her scribe's elegant hand. Yet every victory demanded vigilance. Rumors seeped over the mountains, Ironborn reaving along Fair Isle, half-starved refugees slipping through the Red Mountains with tales of dragons roost on Myreen's parapets. Whispers that the Sparrows, emboldened by kingless streets, sought to crown some new zealot figurehead in King's Landing. Cersei studied each rumor like a jeweler tilting gems beneath lamplight. Facets of threat, facets of opportunity. She called upon alchemists, not for wildfire but for secrets of steel shaving and quartz sand fused into looking glasses. She invited scribes versed in Cohoric ink whose darkness never faded. Every tool was weapon, every gift another rung upon her climb. One twilight, as gulls wheeled above crimson-stained waves, Kevin approached with a missive marked by a cracked wax rose. "From High Garden," he murmured. "Mace Tyrell offers grain, at cost of betrothal between his daughter Marjorie and your son.
Cersei le grand sharp."
Marjorie Tyrell would make a meal of any betrothal to seize power. "I would sooner wed Aegon to a fry girl." Kevin's lips thinned. Starving small folk do not care whose daughter sits beside a king. They care for bread. "Then we will buy grain elsewhere." Kevin hesitated, slow breath drawn. "You play a dangerous game, niece. Allies may become scarce." Cersei's eyes flashed lion gold. "Allies are animals. They follow the strongest scent. When I roar, they will come." That night she wandered terraces above crashing surf. Lanterns bobbed, casting rings of amber across marble. She paused beside a weather-worn statue of King Torrhen Lannister, who had once expelled the Kraken fleets. Spray glittered on his stony beard. Cersei touched his cold hand, sensing kinship across centuries. "Father built a fearsome shadow," she whispered to the tide. "But shadows pass. I will forge something the ages cannot forget." The sea boomed answer. She closed her eyes, letting salt sting lashes. Somewhere behind her, castle bustle murmured. Clang of kitchens, tread of sentries, faint echo of a lullaby as Septimiria soothed her son. The world breathed possibilities. When she opened her eyes, the horizon was black velvet sewn with stars. She lifted her chin. Tomorrow she would summon master masons to carve new sigils along Casterly Rock's bastions. Not only lion, but the lioness. Mane flowing, claws unsheathed. She would emblazon her own image upon banners, not merely Tywin's. The realm would learn her face. And so Cersei's reign in exile began, not as a flight, but as a rebirth. King's Landing simmered. Dragons coiled in eastern skies. Northern wolves licked wounds while preparing new hunts. Yet on the Sunset Sea's jagged coast, a queen gathered power like storm clouds, every breath a silent vow. She would return. She would wield gold and fear, and where iron failed, she would become steel herself. The rock had given her bedrock, but her ambition demanded empire. In halls where lions roared in woven threads, the future's thunder already rumbled. It spoke in Cersei's own heartbeat, measured and inexorable, counting down to the day she would stride eastward under crimson banners, a lioness unchained, reclaiming city, realm, and destiny. And on that day, every rival would know. The queen who fled had not yielded. She had sharpened her claws in western stone, and she was coming to feast. End of Part 1, approximate 35,000 characters, continuing upon request. A damp autumn mist rolled inland from the Sunset Sea, veiling Casterly Rock's lower slopes in shifting ribbons of silver. Cersei Lannister stood on the Lion's Walk, a balcony carved straight into the cliff face, and watched the fog with cautious delight. Every swirl of vapor reminded her of the half-truths she had loosed upon Westeros. Stories that she was bedridden at Storm's End, rumors that she had sailed for Sunspear to woo Dornish spearmen, whispers that she plotted with Braavosi bankers for a fleet to retake King's Landing. In truth, she conspired nowhere and everywhere at once. For the rock itself was become her council chamber, and the mists nothing more than a curtain behind which she rearranged the realm. Below, waves smacked the Seagate Causeway in sluggish cadence. Work crews, 20 miners pressed into service, hauled cedar beams toward freshly raised palisades that would buttress a sally dock for the sleek new longships she had ordered from Fair Isles shipwrights. Cersei let the wind whip her cloak, savoring the scent of resin and salt. A lioness sharpened claws by land and by water both, and she meant for no raider or sail to pass her coast unchallenged. Footsteps scraped behind her. She did not turn. Only one man walked the rock with such measured assurance these days. Jaime. His name floated on rising thermals. Her twin halted a pace back, golden hair ragged from travel, stump of his right wrist bound in supple doeskin. Beneath half-lidded green eyes lingered dust of the gold road. He had arrived 3 nights prior, sneaking through a postern gate with an escort thin as honesty, yet he carried himself as though Casterly Rock had never ceased to be his birthright. "You missed breakfast," he said, voice low, as if reluctant to disturb the gulls. "I thought you might be out here counting ships that are not built yet." She glanced over her shoulder. "And you spent dawn browsing the armory instead of reporting to me. We each have our amusements." He wore plain mail under a leather riding coat. Torchlight from an inner arch danced across scuffed rings. The Kingslayer was leaner than memory, edges honed by captivity. Lines, once playful at the corners of his mouth, had deepened into faint scars scored by reflection and regret. Cersei found herself cataloging those changes as though they were sigils on a scroll, each to be weighed, each to be used. Jaime rested his remaining hand on the balcony rail. "Kevin says you're outfitting 1,000 men with new crossbows and 2,000 more with half-plate. He wonders whether the coffers can bear it." "Kevin wonders many things," she replied. "Yet coins do not lie awake at night fearing who holds the purse. They obey the hand that spends them with purpose." He studied her profile in silence. At length he asked, "What purpose drives you, sister? Is it vengeance or the throne?" She allowed a fine smile. "They are not so different. Have you forgotten father's lesson? Whoever sits on that ugly chair must forever avenge the threat of losing it." A gull shrieked overhead, breaking the hush. Jaime looked away first, eyes following the bird's jagged flight across the fog. He seemed about to speak again, but was spared by the clatter of boots in the corridor beyond. Ser Boros Blunt arriving with a scroll bearing the crimson wax rose of High Garden. "From Lord Mace, your grace." Blunt bowed, fat neck glistening. Cersei cracked the seal before Jaime's gaze. She skimmed the florid script while autumn wind tugged loose amber strands from her braid. When she finished, she laughed, a brittle sound. "Mace offers a new price, 50,000 bushels of grain at half tariff, delivered by Old Town galleys, if I'll name him protector of the Reach in any future council and, of course, confirm a betrothal between his radiant daughter and my son." Jaime's brow climbed. "A softer bargain than before. Because winter approaches. The Reach can reap 3 harvests in a long summer, but frost chokes all men equal." She folded the parchment. "Tyrell fields may feed half the realm, yet a single rumor of a lion army marching south will send their tenant farmers scurrying to stock sellers rather than sell abroad. Mace is bidding against his own fear." Blunt waited, eyes flicking between twins. Cersei lifted a hand, dismissing him and the rose-sealed overture alike. "Tell the Raven Master I shall answer tomorrow. Tonight Lord Tyrell may worry what refusal tastes like." Blunt waddled off. Jaime exhaled a thin chuckle. "You toy with him?" "Of course," she said, meeting his gaze full on. "I learned to play with prettier dolls than Mace when we were still children." He drew closer, lowering his voice. "And if the granaries truly run low come deep winter? You can starve an enemy, yes, but you risk starving banners sworn to you as well." "Not if I seize the grain first." A spark flickered in her eyes. "I've dispatched Ser Flement Brax to negotiate smugglers in Maidenpool. They'll sail upriver at night, load Reach stores onto Lannister-paid wagons, then vanish. Bread will arrive in Lannisport wearing merchant sigils no one questions." She tipped her chin. Let Highgarden complain that its surplus was stolen. The small folk will bless the queen who can still feed them barley stew. Jaime's expression shifted: pride, doubt, something darker. Careful. When people sense theft of bread, they look for heads to punish. She stepped nearer, the hem of her scarlet cloak brushing his boot. Then I will offer them heads. Reavers, scapegoats, faith-mad zealots. Whatever suits the day. But never mine and never our sons. Jaime's hand rose to her cheek, thumb grazing a stray tear of saltwater dew. The gesture was both tender and heavy with the memory of nights spent in corridors of Maegor's Keep. Cersei leaned into his touch only an instant before pulling back. We spend daylight in strategy, she said, voice steady. Night is for other comforts. Jaime's eyes lingered, but he nodded, turned, and strode inside. Cersei followed at measured pace. Behind her the fog thickened, swallowing sea and scaffold alike until all that remained was the steady boom of surf, heartbeat of a fortress older than empires. In the rock's lower galleries, pits of liquid iron glowed hellish. Smith's hammered crossbow limbs forged from steel alloyed with trace obsidian, Qyburn's suggestion, though Master Armorer Timett pretended the notion his own before the queen. Each clang echoed through vaulted tunnels once mined for gold. Now they birthed weapons rather than wealth. Sparks danced like fireflies around Cersei as she made her daily inspection. I want every arbalest rigged with windlass crank, she reminded Timett, her voice cutting through din. A scullery boy must draw and cock one without aid. Speed above strength. As you command, your grace. The armorer bowed. His brow dripped sweat that hissed where it fell upon an anvil. At the range beyond the foundry, bolts slammed into oak buttresses at 40 paces. Cersei observed 3 recruits loose, reload, then loose again in the span of 24 breaths. Not enough, she murmured. I want double. Ser Morland Heatherspoon, ever at her shoulder, smiled thinly beneath a salt and pepper beard. Men will break wrists striving for that pace. Then train stronger wrists. She gave him a sidelong glance that brooked no argument. Archery wins battles. Crossbows decide sieges. And I may lay siege to more than stone walls before this war is done. Later, as the clangor receded behind expanse of marble corridor, Morland dared a question. Do you truly mean to march east within the year? King's Landing may yet hold months. The stag and dragon circle, but neither strikes. Dragons grow while they circle, Cersei replied. Stags gore when you least expect. If Baratheon and Targaryen bleed each other before my banners arrive, so much the better. But I will not wait for a new king or queen to set roots in a throne that is mine by right. They paused before a crimson-draped portal. Inside lay the nursery. Cersei lifted the latch and entered, silencing Morland with a raised palm. Aegon slept in a cradle of gilded oak, cheeks rosy beneath lamplight. Septa Nymeria looked up from her embroidery and dipped her head. Cersei motioned for silence, then eased onto a cushioned bench. She watched her son's tiny chest rise and fall. It was slower now, she thought, than when they fled King's Landing. Fat bulging under silk blankets, arms plump with milk. The child thrived here. The rock nourishes its cubs. She brushed Aegon's downy hair. He will remember only cliffs and surf and the song of forges. Not bells, not riot screams. The moment lingered, fragile as spun glass. Then footsteps approached. Ser Kevin cleared his throat at the door. Even in whispers, his voice carried weight. A message from Lannisport, Nice. A Myrish galley arrived bearing envoys of the Golden Company. Cersei's eyebrow arched. Sel's words cloaked as merchants? Kevin dipped his head. Possibly. They request audience. Their captain speaks of opportunities along the Western Sea. They claim veterans who fought in the Stepstones and are eager to pledge swords where coin flows. A slow smile unfurled. Invite them at dusk. I'll learn how eager. She rose, smoothing her skirts. Have the harbor garrison double watch in case their eagerness masks blades meant for my back. Kevin gave a tight nod. As he left, Cersei lingered over her son once more. Golden Company once served a Blackfire, she whispered to the sleeping boy. Let them now serve a Lannister, and they may yet find the gold in their name true. The envoys met her in the Hall of Echoes, where torches painted shifting shadows across marble lions poised on plinths. Captain Endros Rivers, brown-skinned, bald, his cloak's lining stitched with the Golden Company's winged dragon, bowed deep. Behind him stood 2 sergeants and a lean scribe. We offer 10,000 swords at 10,000 dragons apiece, Endros began, accent lilting. Experienced, loyal while paid. We can muster in Volantis within a moon, or sooner if ships are found. Cersei drummed manicured fingers on the lion-armed chair. 10,000 dragons per sword is no small sum. Quality commands its price. Endros did not blink. Jaime lounged nearby, polishing the edge of a dirk, one of Morland's balanced offhand designs. His gaze slid from blade to Sellsword captain. And what stops your quality from selling itself to the Dragon Queen should she match the purse? The company takes payment in advance, Endros said calmly, and seldom breaks a signed contract. Seldom, Jaime echoed. But not never. Endros's jaw twitched. Not in living memory. Cersei considered him a moment longer, then rose. I will not hire 10,000 Sellswords until I have weighed how many Westerland's men will join my banners for honor alone. But I will hire 500 now. She named a sum half his asking price. Loyalty must be proved. Endros inclined his head. 500 it is. We can debark at Lannisport as soon as your harbor can berth our hull. So be it. She extended a hand. He brushed lips to her knuckles with studied reverence. As he withdrew, Cersei fixed him with lion-bright eyes. Remember, a Lannister pays her debts in gold or blood. Disappoint me, and the debt will not be gold. Endros Rivers bowed a final time, then turned on booted heel. Jaime watched him exit with quiet amusement. You baited him nicely, he said. I test every chain before I lean on it. She settled back into her seat. When the day comes that I ride east, I want no weak link snapping beneath my weight. Winter announced itself with a storm. Gales hammered the rock's outer battlements. Waves exploded against sea gates in fountains of white foam. For 3 days thunder shuddered through royal chambers. Cersei met the tempest with resolve. She convened her council at dawn on the 2nd day. Kevan, Jaime, Ser Boros, Morland, Maester Colliard, and the grim alchemist Renfar Hill, who had replaced Qyburn as her secret keeper. The time has arrived, she declared, voice easily riding the howl of wind against arrow slits. When the roads thaw, we march.
Ser Boros chifti daniseli.
Jaime's mouth quirked. Kevan merely watched, eyes an unreadable gray. Cersei turned toward a map unrolled across iron trestles. Pins of onyx marked strongpoints. Case, Fair Castle, Craighall. Rubies denoted allied houses, sworn by gold or promise. Opals for uncertain lords, garnets for declared foes. At King's Landing's tiny circle, she had driven a splinter of black steel. We hold the west. The Riverlands remain fractured. The Reach sits fat behind castle walls, but Mace's pride rots them from within. If we march by Gold Road, half the realm will flock to banners out of hunger or fear. Within a moon of crossing the Blackwater, the Iron Throne will either kneel or burn. She tapped the black pin. Kevan folded arms. You gamble that Daenerys Targaryen remains east for months yet. Reports say her dragons have grown. Cersei's lip curled. Dragons cannot fly across half a world on empty bellies. They require ships, and ships require coin. But coin is not endless, even for slavers or self-styled queens. The longer she waits, the more she needs fresh gold. And gold is what we deny her, just as we deny the Tyrells their grain markets. Ser Morland laid a gauntlet finger on the map. What of the faith militant? King's Landing bristles with armed sparrow bands. They might contest any siege from inside as much as we from without. They will, Cersei agreed, which is why we cultivate them now. She beckoned Renfar Hill, who stepped forward clutching a velvet pouch. He spilled its contents. polished septon coins etched with father, mother, warrior. Yet each wafer bore, in minuscule lettering along the rim, "Reign in mercy, Queen Cersei's will." "Devout tokens," Renfar explained. "Distribute them through whisper channels. Hungry zealots will trade prayers for bread and curse dragons for copper if the coin carries a lion's scent." Jaime barked a laugh. "By the righteous with baubles masquerading as holy relics? The righteous starve like anyone," Cersei replied coldly. "They will bless the hand that feeds them, even if it claws." No one dared dispute her. The storm outside boomed like an omen. When weather cleared, riders streamed from the rock bearing sealed parchment to every Banner household. Some messages offered gold in exchange for levies. Others threatened ruin should neutrality persist. A third set, carried by silent men wearing no house colors, bore only 7-pointed stars and instructions for abandoned septries to reopen under lion patronage. Cersei's spymaster, an acolyte of Renfar, codenamed Silent Mole, sifted replies each night. One parchment from Ashmark read, "The bear would sooner dance than the stag should the lion lead." Another from House SWYFT contained a blood-red fingerprint and the line, "Our swords, our sons." Only a few lords answered with cautious deferral, citing harvest or plague. Their names she marked in a separate ledger titled Future Lessons. In those weeks, Jaime drifted like a sword in search of a sheath. He inspected drills in lower yards, sparred with Morland using left-handed grips until sweat soaked the sand, and spent solitary evenings atop Windhaven's spire staring eastward, where sunset bled across distant sky. Cersei would join him at times, a wine flagon shared between them. Their conversations edged along memories, diverging into silence whenever mention arose of kings slain or vows broken. One night, beneath a moon thin as a shard of broken pearl, Jaime spoke a truth that hung between them like frost. "If we take the city, what next? Will peace follow conquest, or must we forever sharpen swords?" She considered the pale thread of his reflection in the flagon. "Peace is a cloak covering blades. Father knew this. He kept Westeros cowed because he never sheathed the sword you speak of." She looked up, candlelight sparking gold in her eyes. "I will not sheath mine." Jaime exhaled. "Then perhaps no one ever shall." She touched his cheek. "That is not our burden alone. It is the price every ruler pays to keep the wolf from the door." She pressed closer, velvet-scraping mail. "Do you still stand beside me?" "Always," he whispered, though the word trembled in the cold. They shared the night's warmth, and in the hush that followed she wondered if his always retained all its old iron, or if captivity had smelted something brittle beneath the gold. Yet dawn found him at drill once more, instructing young squires in shield wall tactics father had favored. Whatever ghosts haunted him, duty still bent his knee toward her cause. Winter's curtain fell for good. Ice clung to sea claws beneath causeways, and geese abandoned inland lakes for warmer shores. In Casterly Rock's courtyard 6,000 men gathered, bannermen, household knights, Sellsword companies wearing lion brooches newly cast in the forge fires. Their armor flickered in torchlight as Lord Crakehall shouted roll. Cersei observed from a tone balcony above, Jaime at her right, Kevin at her left. The roar of voices answering muster thrummed through her bones like a drumline calling kings to judgment. "These are but the first," Kevin murmured. "More march from Case and Cornfield." Cersei nodded. Her cloak whipped in the wind, crimson lined with sable. Tailors had stitched her sigil anew. A lioness rampant, mouth open in mid-roar, claws unsheathed. She wore no crown. She would not don one until King's Landing knelt. But she wore power. Serpentine golden torque at her throat, jeweled pommel dagger at hip, confidence like a second skin. A horn sounded from seaward cliffs. Scouts signaled the arrival of 5 lean longships, Fair Isle's first tribute. Sails blazoned with golden lions snapped crisp against pale sky, keels slicing foam as they turned for the fortified dock. A cheer rose from the assembled host. Cersei allowed herself the slightest grin. Lions ruled land and water both this day. She raised both arms. Silence rippled outward until even wind seemed to hush. Men of the West, her voice, amplified by the natural echo of cliff walls, rang clear. Too long have we watched lesser beasts gnaw at the bones of kings. Too long has the Iron Throne been claimed by stag and sparrow, usurped by wolves and threatened by dragonfire. The realm forgets who fed it coin, who paved its roads, who guarded its coasts. Westeros forgets the lion's roar. Torches flared in mailed fists, eyes lifted. I have been called arrogant, cruel, mad, a queen who fled her city. Yet look upon these walls. Look upon your brothers beside you. I did not flee. I retreated to sharpen the claw that will rend our enemies. I am Cersei of House Lannister, first of my name, chosen by iron and blood to reclaim the seat of Aegon's heirs. Follow me east, and you march with gold in your purse and glory at your side. Stand against me, and you will hear the roar from the grave your defiance digs. A pause, long enough to let hearts pound, to let ambition swell. Then she spoke the words Tywin had once whispered into her childish ear on a balcony not unlike this one. A Lannister always pays her debts. She let the phrase ride the hush. It is time the realm paid its debt to us. The courtyard erupted. Spears rattled shields, banners whipped, voices blended into a single thunderous cry that rolled through galleries and soared out to sea. Lioness! Lioness! Lannister! Jaime watched her with something between awe and dread. Kevin lowered his head in solemn acceptance. He had served Tywin. Now he would serve her. As the chant echoed, Cersei felt power surge like wildfire in her veins. Hot, irresistible, deadly. The path ahead stretched littered with perils. Dragons, stags, sparrows, wolves. But every beast bled red, and gold, malleable as fate, would mold the outcome. She dropped her arms. Trumpeters sounded a peal of advance. Below, captains began barking marching orders. Men spilled toward supply wagons, quartermasters flinging open crates of crossbows oiled to a mirror sheen. Winter sun broke through shreds of iron-gray cloud, catching her sigil so it blazed as though alive. Somewhere far beyond horizon, King's Landing's domes still shimmered beneath weak sunlight. She imagined torchlight playing across the Iron Throne spikes, each a blade waiting for its rightful owner. Wait a little longer, she thought, the lioness rampant upon her cloak seeming to ripple as though in agreement. I am coming. Night before the march, she ventured alone into the crypt at the rock's core. A cavernous chamber hewn in ages past where Lannister kings lay in marble repose. Torches guttered, casting giants of shadow. She walked the aisle flanked by statues. King Lorien I with his sword of landstone, Queen Helera with lion cubs at her feet, the stern visage of her own grandfather Tytos who had failed to hold the realm in awe. She halted before Tywin's sarcophagus. White marble, lion effigy at foot, hands clasped around a sculpted sword. The face captured his implacable calm. Father, she murmured, voice echoing among pillars. You raised me to rule. You told me fear and love cannot share the same heart. She brushed cool stone. I have chosen fear as you did, but I will wield it more perfectly. When I sit the throne again, I will never relinquish it. Not to soft counselors, not to priests, not to sons too gentle for iron. Her words lingered. In their wake came only distant drip of water. She felt, rather than heard, the weight of his silent judgment. It stiffened her spine. Watch me, she whispered, and see your legacy fulfilled. She turned and strode back up the stair. Behind her, the carved lion's eyes glittered emptily, but in Cersei's mind they flashed with grim approval. Dawn. Frost glazed the ramparts, glittering beneath torch flare. Horns sounded thrice. First for rations, second for readiness, third for march. The western host formed in 9 columns along the plateau road. Baggage wagons creaked under grain sacks branded with a lion. Mule carts bore casks of lamp oil, rolls of linen bandage, bolts for 10,000 crossbows. 500 Golden Company veterans took vanguard position, helms painted dull to avoid glare.
Ale brown banners trimmed in gold flutered beside Lion Crimson.
armies seldom mixed their colors. Cersei forced them, heraldry interwoven, so the realm would see mercenaries subsumed by Lannister will. At column head rode Jaime, shining in new lobster plate like beaten red gold, left arm bearing a kite shield embossed with twin lions in mirrored stance. Atop a white courser, he resembled some hero of old Undul songs. Cersei approached on a black courser, her armor lighter, scarlet brigandine over mail, gorget of chased silver hugging her throat, hair piled in a crown of braids. The host quieted as she trotted forward. She scanned faces. Boys no older than Tommen had been, grizzled veterans who'd fought under Tywin at the Trident, Sellswords with mocking smiles, hedge knights riding patched geldings. Amid that sea of eyes, she saw hunger. Hunger for gold, for glory, for purpose. She would feed them all. Her voice, when it carried out, needed no herald. Westermen, today we ride for our birthright. We ride not as raiders, but as reclaimers. Remember your oaths. Remember every insult paid west of the Mander, every tax levied by fools in silks, every sneer from those who think lions declawed. Today we show them our claws still bleed. She reined around, cloak billowing. Trumpets blared. The columns rolled forward. A hush fell upon Casterly Rock as hooves clattered over drawbridge timber. Snowflakes drifted from low clouds, settling on helms like winter crowns. Thousands of boots thudded in rhythm. Banner poles creaked. The sea wind carried faint cheers from fisherfolk lining cliff paths, hats removed, hands over hearts. Some cast petals, winter roses, pale blue against crimson cloth. Cersei's courser climbed the first ridge. At its crest she paused and looked back. Through parting mist she glimpsed the rock. Towers knifing sky, banners dancing. The nursery balcony where Septimiaria watched with Aegon bundled in her arms. The infant waved chubby fists as if to command the host himself. Cersei's heart clenched, not with doubt, but with joy so fierce it bordered pain. Watch, my son, she thought. The realm I carved today will be yours. She spurred forward. The lion's army descended the ridge, a crimson serpent winding into fog, bound east toward cities of stone and streets of ash. Behind them, waves broke endlessly against the cliff, beat of destiny that would not cease until the Iron Throne's blades rang beneath a lioness's heel. By twilight, they reached the border of House Farman's holdings. A messenger galloped from Fair Castle bearing tidings. Euron Greyjoy's longships had swept the Shield Islands, burning Beacon Isle and capturing a Tyrell grain fleet bound for Old Town. Cersei read the report by firelight, eyes narrowing. The Ironborn raid the Reach at will. She handed the parchment to Jaime. If Euron bleeds Tyrell shipping, Mace will crawl to me for protection. We may not need to raid his grain at all. It was Jaime who suggested a bolder stroke. Send envoys to Pike. Promise Euron safe harbor at Lannisport for his plundered cargo. Tax-free. Let him sail grain here, not to Harlaw, in exchange for lion gold. Cersei laughed. Bribe Krakens with coin? They prefer salt and slaughter. But coin buys men to row, Jaime countered. Euron loves spectacle more than principle. If we give him an audience for his sails, he'll strike wherever we point. She paced, boots crunching frost. The idea was outrageous, allying with reavers who had once burned Lannisport. Yet war made monsters of allies and allies of monsters. And if Ironborn sails preyed on Tyrell supply lines while filling Lannister granaries, her cause grew fat. Send a raven, she decided. Offer him 90,000 golden dragons per captured granary ship, and my word of safe anchorage for his prizes. But ensure he understands. Betray me once, and there will be no rock high enough to hide him from my wrath. Jaime penned the letter himself. As Quill scratched wax-flecked parchment, Cersei watched candle flame glint on the stump of his right wrist. She thought of hands, the one severed to save his life, the one that had once closed around her own in midnight corridors. Sacrifice left scars, but scars hardened skin. Perhaps the realm, too, needed new scars before it could heal beneath a lion's paw. March slowed in deepening snow. Columns split to forage. One claw along River Road toward Golden Tooth, another south through rolling vineyards where frost-nipped grapes hung like opals. Cersei rode interchangeably with vanguard and rearguard, her presence a spur to discipline. Where she passed, men straightened ranks. Kitchen drudges ceased grumbling. Petty lords bowed from saddle. In every village, she made show of distributing barley and salt cod purchased from Granary Lane merchants. Food stamped with a lion seal none had seen before. Villagers cheered. Some dropped to knees. She accepted their devotion with gracious nods but sharpened memory of any who looked away. At Ashmark, a fever outbreak threatened to delay march. Cersei commandeered the castle as field hospital, ordering Maester Colliard to mix honeyed poppy and willow tea. She walked the courtyards in pre-dawn gloom, cloak dragging snow, speaking quiet words to soldiers wrapped in shivering blankets. Jaime found her there, kneeling by a dying squire whose breath rattled like loose iron. "You'll catch the chill," he warned. She glanced up, eyes fierce. "I do not fear cold." She pressed a gloved hand to the squire's brow. "If the queen walks among the sick, who will dare desert?" Hours later the boy died, but desertion cut to zero. Rumor said the queen herself closed his eyes. Such tales spread faster than fever. Winter solstice approached. Campfires dotted the rolling foothills west of Sarsfield like scattered constellations. In her command tent, a red pavilion trimmed in black lioness she had dubbed the Den, Cersei studied a fresh web of intelligence. Ravens reported that King's Landing now flew banners of the Faith militant atop the September, while Stannis Baratheon's host besieged from the south bank of the Blackwater. Dragon banners had not yet appeared, though rumors of silver-haired envoys at lists multiplied. Morland entered, cloak dripping sleet. Scouts confirm river road passable. We can reach Maidenpool in 6 weeks if snows hold. Snows seldom hold, she said, but her mind ran ahead. 6 weeks to Maidenpool, then 2 more to Rosby, if Stannis' siege lines hadn't yet choked the northern approach. The timing might align with starvation rumors rising inside the capital. A lion army arriving as saviors from famine, bearing grain raided by Euron, no less, would appear heaven-sent. She looked at the map. A chessboard of blood, she mused. Each piece moved in hidden orbits. Ironborn in the Shield Islands, Reach Lords nursing wounded pride, Targaryen ships rumored in Volantis, northern wolves still snarling along the neck. Yet she held the initiative. While others battered at King's Landing or plotted across seas, she advanced, steady, relentless, as a tide no breakwater could resist. On the eve of the new year, Jaime sought her beneath starlight. Snow muffled the camp, tents aglow with lanterns. He found her atop a bluff overlooking the Blackwater High Road, where miles to east faint orange stained the clouds. Wildfire stockpiles or braziers of siege, no matter, it marked her destination. He approached quietly. She did not turn. "Do you remember?" he asked. "The day Robert rode into King's Landing after the rebellion? When father stood before the Iron Throne waiting to kneel?" Cersei's breath clouded. "I remember father kneeling to no man." "But he did," Jaime said. "Briefly, I watched his eyes as he bowed. He took measure of Robert's reign in a heartbeat and planned its fall in the next. I thought I understood him then. Now I'm not so sure." She faced him. "Why speak of this tonight?" "Because I see that same look in your eyes." He searched her face. "Father's look, and I wonder what price you'll ask of yourself, and of me, before you deem the realm subdued." A breeze lifted her cloak like wings. "Any price," she whispered. "Every price." Jaime took a step back. Snow crunched. He nodded, not agreement nor refusal, but acknowledgement of the chasm opening between them. Yet he offered his arm, and she laid slender fingers on it. They descended the bluff together, silhouettes against flickering campfires. Twin halves of one legend, walking into snow toward the city that would decide whether their bond forged empires or consumed them whole. Dawn of March resumed. Horns, hooves, breath fogging the cold. Cersei mounted beneath a sky the color of hammered pewter. Frost-brocaded standards caught the wind, unfurling like battle hymns. Drums thudded, and the host began its crawl eastward anew. an avalanche in slow motion, unstoppable once begun. Miles behind, Casterly Rock's lion banners still rippled on distant towers, guardians of memory and air. Miles ahead, King's Landing awaited. Throne tarnished, populace starving, faith aflame, enemy banners warring at its gates. Between them rode the lioness, cloak swirling like spilled wine, eyes alight with purpose unquenchable. With every clop of hoof, every creak of wagon axle, she recited silently the vow she had carved upon her heart the day she abandoned the city. I fled not in fear, but in fury. I return with fury forged into fate. And so the road swallowed them, queen, twin, uncle, host, into a winter destined to burn. Snow shivered from the bare branches of elm and ash as the western host wound through Maiden's Vale. A narrow defile gouged down the back of the black hills whose shale flanks rang with the rasp of hobnailed boots. At the column's head, Cersei felt the hush of the place settle across helmets like invisible dust. The valley was steep and bent like a scythe. Sun touched the ridges for scant minutes at midday. Even the horses snorted as though wary of mountain ghosts. She rode beside Jaime and Ser Morland, with a pair of Golden Company outriders flanking the banner pole. Their scarlet cloth cracked in the brittle wind, lioness rampant stitched with thread so fine it gleamed almost liquid in the weak light. Behind her clattered 8 siege wagons laden with cedar mantlets and steel-shod rams shipped in pieces from Fair Isle. Though the Blackwater lay many leagues ahead, Cersei intended every hammerstroke of preparation to echo along the walls of King's Landing long before her first trumpet. The valley path climbed in switchbacks. At a dogleg gorge no wider than 2 wagons abreast, they found the road half-blocked by a tumble of limestone, the sort of rockslide that comes of winter thaw and stray goat hooves. Yet Ser Morland's brow furrowed. "Too neat," he muttered, dismounting to prod the pile. Shattered shards were fresh split. As he stooped, an arrow hissed from the scrub above, shaft burying in a wagon board with a dull crack. The host startled. Another arrow zipped past Cersei's cheek. "Ambush!" Jaime barked, drawing his left-hand blade and wheeling his courser toward the slope. Cersei stayed seated, spine straight. Panic served only those who sprung the trap. She scanned the ridgeline, silhouettes ducking behind fir trunks, ragged, ill-armored. Bandits, not troops, and few in number. She raised her voice, clear, commanding, before her men could scatter in a frenzy. "Shields to the wagon line. Archers knock. Hold. Release on my mark." Siege handcart drivers swung crossbows from hooks, bracing footclaws in the scree. 20 heartbeats of stillness hung like thin ice. Then her arm cut the air. Bolts loosed in a ragged volley. Some skipped wide, others snapped brittle branches, but half found soft targets. 2 figures tumbled downslope, screaming as they slid. The rest fled, leaving only bloodspore and a hill echo hollow but for the raven's croak. Morland hauled the biggest limestone slab aside with a team of oxen. He wiped dust from his gloves, eyes bright. They meant nuisance, not slaughter. "A warning most likely," Jaime said, resheathing. "Someone paid mountain scum to slow us." Cersei flexed frozen fingers on her reins, which suggests our enemy fears speed more than strength. She ordered the host forward, doubling guard on foragers and dispatching riders ahead to clear the next 2 passes. They broke camp that evening on a plateau where a half-collapsed windmill leaned amid drifts. Beyond the ridge, the land fell away into a basin-frosted pearl under a blind moon. Cersei walked among cookfires, cloak pulled tight, greeting watch captains by name. It was not a gesture of sentiment. Soldiers who heard the queen speak their names fought doubly hard to keep them upon her tongue. In her pavilion, she studied a cracked vellum surveyor's chart. The lines cross-hatched the riverlands, but upon it she sketched fresh arrows. One thrust north toward Duskendale, another curling south to cross the Windwater behind Stannis' encampment. She considered each route the way a jeweler turns a gemstone, gauging where to cut a new facet. A runner arrived from the vanguard. Scouts captured a prisoner with Tyrell badges sewn beneath a bandit cloak. Cersei received the man grim-eyed. Clad in torn brown, he shook like a sapling in wind, though the pavilion brazier glowed red-hot. She poured wine, neither kindness nor cruelty, merely the tool best suited. And ask soft questions. Julian Fossaway's bastard confessed the Tyrell steward at Hayholt hired hillfolk to delay the lion host until Tyrell field marshals could assemble a screen across the Rose Road. She sent him back minus one ear, wearing a scroll tied about his throat. Mace Tyrell, you stoop to hire thieves while your people starve. The forge fire waits to melt your resolve or your crown if you cling to it. A lioness needs no stinger's deceit to hunt. She runs you down in open field. She did not know whether the bastard would reach Highgarden alive. The message needed only rumor to ride. That night wind keened over canvas like a newborn whale. Cersei sat awake, quill gliding across parchment as she drafted decrees. Levies for grain levies, pardons for smiths who could fashion chainshot, bounties for anyone delivering barrels of pitch to the host. Beside her flickered a green glass candle, Qyburn. Once whispered such candles burned by alchemy rather than flame, able to conjure visions. Cersei saw none, yet their unnatural glow steadied her resolve. Power could be coaxed from anything so long as fear lent it heat. Morning dawned cold, but a raven soared in on black wings, heavy pouch clacking. Euron Greyjoy had replied. The missive was scrawled in rust brown, blood or wine, who could say? Promising a fleet of 18 longships laden with grain, saltfish, and other trophies to arrive off Lannisport within 3 weeks. His price. The 90,000 dragons agreed, plus leave to parade chained prisoners through the harbor for spectacle. Cersei smiled. Let the Kraken parade his captives. Spectacle fed fear, and fear fed obedience. They marched at once for Maidenpool, bypassing Rose Road watchers by threading coppices seldom patrolled. Snow muted the column's thunder. In low villages peasants knelt on frozen fields as the host passed, their breath pluming like hearth smoke. Cersei had bards ride ahead distributing cakes stamped with lioness burns, cheap flour sweetened by dried apple peel, yet the simple indulgence drew tears from gaunt faces. Bread had become currency truer than silver. On the 12th day, the first walls of Maidenpool peaked between frosted alder groves. Smoke from a dozen chimneys rose listless against leaden sky. Once the town bustled as a minor port. Now its harbor lay half-frozen and its watchtower flagless. The mayor, a stooped man named Wnh, met them at the east gate under guard of 4 grim archers. By whose authority does this army cross Lord Mutton's lands? He demanded. Cersei dismounted, snow crunching. She removed a gauntlet, offering a bare hand. Yet her voice was steel. By the authority of the rightful queen of Westeros, Cersei of House Lannister. She let the words crack like hoarfrost splitting oak. Is Lord Mutton present to contest that? The mayor's Adam's apple bobbed. Mutton had ridden with Stannis months earlier, leaving bailiffs and empty grain bins behind. Townsfolk muttered of conscripts never returned. No, your grace, Wnh admitted, bowing shallow. We lacked word of your advance. Now you have it. She swept a gaze over the thin crowd gathering, faces hollow, clothing patched. We will quarter 2 nights only, purchase stores at fair price, and leave coin enough to rebuild your watchtower wall. She pitched her voice to Carrie. Any man caught molesting a citizen shall lose the hand that did the deed. Murmurs rippled. Shock at her promise of payment louder than the threat. Within hours, her quartermasters exchanged silver lions for salted pork and cracked barley. Bakers fired their cold ovens. Fishermen pried slush from boats to cast nets. That night torches dotted Maidenpool's wharves like fallen stars, and the town's silence thawed into market chatter. Cersei convened with Jaime and Kevin in the hall of Lord Mutton's manse. Dust layered thick on gilt lamps. Mapstones specked with spilled wine depicted the Blackwater and its forks. Scouts reported Stannis' camp sprawled south of the river from Redgrass Field to the causeway, ringed by sharpened stakes and trebuchet masts. His provisions were dwindling, yet men from the Stormlands still trickled in. Inside King's Landing, the Faith militant patrolled streets and barred gatehouses, while small folk rioted nightly for bread. The Golden Company's spies claimed the High Septon, once a cobbler, prepared a proclamation naming the Faith sole protectors of the Iron Throne until a righteous king or queen appeared. Jaime traced the river with a mailed fingertip. If Stannis breaches the city first, he'll hoist his stag banner before you arrive. He chokes the southern bank. The mud gate is within his trebuchet range. Then we starve him, Cersei said. Turn his own hunger against the cities. We bring grain wagons to the northern gate and feed the starving while Stannis watches his men gnaw boot leather. Assuming the faith allows your entry, Kevin cautioned, they may see you as equal sinner. Cersei's smile flared. And whose teachings command succor for the hungry widow? The sparrow may hide behind piety, but he dare not refuse bread before the eyes of the righteous he hopes to rally. She looked to her uncle. We serve body first, soul after. Once bread wins the streets, swords follow. They rode from Maidenpool 3 mornings later, leaving behind coffers lighter but goodwill heavy. At Sweetwater Creek, they caught their first sight of Blackwater Rush. Wide, sluggish beneath spotted ice. Smoke columns smudged the horizon. The siege of King's Landing announced itself in that dirty smear against winter sky. The host bivouacked under leaf-bare poplars. Scouts reported Stannis's lines busy with foragers hacking frozen turnips from ground. The city's north gate remained barred, but sporadic torch flares atop its battlements betrayed restless garrisons. Wildfire stores? Or faith militant signal fires? Cersei meant to know. She dispatched Ser Boros in white cloak with a small escort, carrying banners of truce. They rode to the bridge over the Rush where Stannis's men controlled the fording barges. Hours passed. Dusk painted the river mauve, then ash. At last Boros returned, horse lathered. Lord Stannis will not treat. He spat as grooms steadied him. He swore by Lightbringer's fire that no false queen shall pass North Bank while he claims the throne. Jaime cursed softly. Cersei's jaws clenched. If Lightbringer burns so bright, she said, let it guide him to his grave. She ordered engineers forward. By torchlight, they assembled collapsible pontoon components, tarred planks, inflated ox skins, hemp lashings. Before dawn, hidden by fog wreathing the Rush, her men ferried across an initial contingent of 300 Golden Company veterans. Silence cloaked each oarstroke. Frost damp muffled boots upon the opposite bank. They fanned south behind enemy pickets and severed 2 supply roads by felling trees across ruts, then set torches to hay wagons meant for Stannis's draft teams. By sunup, columns of smoke rose like grave markers along his flank. Stannis responded with furious countersorties, but found his raiding parties flensed by crossbow quarrels fired from hedgerow blinds planted by Cersei's huntsmen. Each time he advanced north to engage, her men pulled back to shallow boats and slipped across the river, leaving corpses cooling on brown grass. The queen watched through a spyglass from a ridge crest. She saw chaos bloom, a pincushion heap of horses blocking the Wendwater ford, flaming wagons jammed at a timber bridge. She saw Stormlanders scramble to douse arrow-fletched tents as casks of lamp oil, hidden by her infiltrators, ignited with a whoosh. And she smiled. But war seldom grants victory cheap. A day later, Stannis's South Bank trebuchets hurled barrels brimming with pitch across the Rush. Half burst short, black muck hissing into frigid water. One crashed among her forward tents, splintering like brittle bone. Fire belched skyward. Cries tore the morning. She rode into smoke, face wrapped in damp scarf, ordering bucket lines until embers choked in mud. 20 men died. 20 more bore burns. She commanded their pyres lit at river edge. No hidden graves. Every soldier watched the flames and understood price. Night fell, crisp and bitter. In the quiet, Jaime found her alone at a makeshift palisade, staring at the city's distant crown of walls. The air smelled of scorched wool, burned pitch, frozen soil. He touched her elbow. They suffered for your game of harass and retreat. She did not look away. They died for the city they have yet to take. Their ashes blow west, home to their kin, who will remember the queen who dared where others skulked. He studied her profile, hard, exquisite, unforgiving. When does daring become slaughter? Ask the smith who quenches steel, she said. Metal screams in water, yet emerges stronger. She turned to him at last, eyes fierce. These flames temper the realm. A hush lingered. Only river ice cracked in the dark. Jaime's hand dropped. He stepped back, shook his head once, and vanished into shadow. Cersei remained, gaze fixed on King's Landing. Torches glittered on its curtain walls like fireflies. She traced each light with her mind. A hungry soldier's candle, a zealot's pyre, a starving mother clutching children. She would wrap those lights in golden claws. She would feed them and they would kneel. The next pre-dawn she donned plain wool, hood drawn low, and rode with 10 select knights disguised as grain merchants. 2 wagons creaked behind, brimming with hemp sacks. At the northern causeway, they found a throng of refugees huddled outside King's Landing's cow gate, begging entry from gatehouse archers in drab faith sashes. Cersei dismounted, striding to the front. "Bread for the faithful," she cried, voice pitched ragged. She cut a sack, letting rice spill into gloved palms of a ragged girl. The crowd surged, clawing for grain. Her knights pushed them back just enough to form a queue. Faint golden morning haloed the scene. Gatehouse archers shouted for order. A young septon descended, robes frayed, face gaunt. "Who sends this bounty?" he demanded. "A mother of the realm," Cersei answered, gaze steady beneath shadowed cowl. "One who fled sin and now returns with penitent heart." She indicated the sacks, each stamped discreetly with a lion's paw. "Take these within. Let the hungry eat this night." The septon eyed her skeptically, yet hunger outweighed suspicion. He signaled. Portcullis chains rattled, admitting wagons. Inside, Cersei glimpsed narrow streets teeming with beggars. She withdrew before the septon could press further. All afternoon she repeated the ruse, each wagon unloading under Faith's supervision. By dusk rumor raced through Flea Bottom. Bread rains from queens come to repent. The High Sparrow, now styling himself His Holiness the Anointed Hand, summoned an emergency conclave. From covert vantage atop a half-ruined inn, Cersei observed cloaked novice brothers ferrying her sacks through alleys toward the September. She imagined them stacking lion paw flats before altars as the sparrow harangued about humility. Unaware, he preached atop the queen's gift. Satisfaction, warm and sharp, slid through her veins. Back at camp, she drafted a parchment to His Holiness, sealed in wax impressed with the 7-pointed star rather than lion. "Bread is first gift of contrition. I beg audience at dawn to confess further misdeeds and serve the realm under the Father's gaze." She signed only a penitent mother. Ser Boros delivered it by skiff across the rush under flag of truce. Night frost silvered every tent rope. She slept in furs, dreamless, until horns blared before sunrise. Signal from pickets that riders under faith banners approached. She rose at once, threw on wool and leather, and strode to the palisade just as dawn painted ice the color of raw steel. 9 riders halted beyond rangy spears. Their leader, a bearded elder in patched gray cloaks, called across. "His Holiness invites the penitent queen to present herself at Baylor September under safe conduct, unarmed, accompanied by 3 attendants only." He would not use her name, yet he named her still. She gave assent. Jaime protested, wordless grip on her wrist, but she shook him off. "If I fear the faith," she whispered, "how can I rule those who worship it?" She chose Ser Morland, a scribe named Jocasta, and Septenaria, whose presence as a holy woman lent weight, to ride with her. Before she mounted, she pressed a folded parchment into Jaime's hand. "If I do not return by dusk, open this." He frowned but nodded, eyes twin mirrors of morning's iron sky. The ride under truce felt like sailing a river of glass. Faith escort parted crowds that thronged at sight of her dusty cloak. Whispers hissed, the lioness, the sinful queen, bread-bearer, which, she kept gaze forward, counting breaths. Baylor's September loomed scorched yet stately, its great dome patched after wildfire damage. Inside, colonnades smelled of incense and unwashed bodies. Hundreds knelt, shoulders touching. Cersei sensed hunger more than piety, their gaunt eyes fixed upon the dais where the High Sparrow stood clad in plain wool. His beard had grown, streaked white, making him appear carved from driftwood. She stepped upon marble floor scarred by boot scuffs, stopped 10 paces from him. No crown, no guards, only courage and ice. "Your Holiness," she said, bowing head but not knee, "I come bearing contrition and remedy." "Contrition is proved by deeds," he intoned. "The realm weeps under sin of pride, greed, and lust for power." She allowed a single nod. "Pride burned this city once. I would quench hunger before flame devours again." She gestured. Jocasta produced scrolls detailing grain convoys en route, Euron's captured stores, Tyrell tithe, even crates pledged from Gulltown merchants. The sparrow reed, brows beetling. Murmurs rippled through the nave as peasants realized bread's promise. Yet the old man's eyes narrowed. "Why expect trust, Queen, when your hands still stink of wildfire and kinslaughter?" Cersei lifted her chin. "Because even the Father forgave kings who spilled blood. Yet none forgave the king who starved his people." A hush, she pressed advantage. "I demand no throne today, only passage for my convoys and freedom to succor streets the realm forgot. Let the faith witness every loaf delivered. If I break that vow, may the seven strike me dead." She held his gaze. Seconds stretched. Finally the sparrow lifted a hand. Crooked, yellowed. "Bread may save bellies," he said, "but only faith saves souls. We accept your grain. Yet before you step beyond these pillars, you shall atone." He beckoned novices bearing a plain gray robe and pair of bone shears. She understood. They'd crop her hair, symbol of humility, and dress her in penitent garb. A lesser woman might balk. Cersei considered refusal. One raised voice and her escorts would cut down novices by the score. But outside, 10,000 starving eyes waited. She unclasped her cloak. "Very well," she said. There, in sight of beggars and lords alike, she endured the scissors snipping golden locks that had once draped shoulders like sunlight. They fell upon marble like withered petals. She donned the robe. Gasps flared, some triumphant, some pitying. She felt no shame, only the weight lift, a lioness shedding one coat for another. When ceremony ended, the sparrow's thin lips quivered almost grudgingly. "Go, and do not fail your vow." He motioned her from the dais. She walked out of Baelor's September barefooted, scalp stinging under cold air. Crowds parted, awed. Not a single rotten vegetable flew. Not a jeer cut the hush. She mounted her horse. Nyeria helped settle the robe. In those stunned faces, she saw the first embers of allegiance. Riding through narrow streets, she spotted graffiti newly daubed. A lioness silhouette beside 7 pointed stars. Already the narrative wove itself. Queen humbled by faith, yet providing bread kings denied. At the northern gate Jaime waited, eyes blazing as he beheld her shorn hair. He hissed outrage. She silenced him with raised palm. "Open the letter another day," she said. "This penance cost me nothing I would not sacrifice again." And it purchased the city. By dusk her convoys rolled through Cowgate, grain from the Kraken's plunder, salt cod from Westerland's depots, wheels of cheese sent by Craighall dairies. Faith brothers oversaw distribution. Small folk cheered. Sparrow septons sang psalms giving thanks to mercy born of humility. Yet each sack bore the lioness stamp, indelible reminder whose mercy filled their bowls. Stannis watched from across the rush, powerless. His scouts reported city gates handing out bread to citizens. Men began deserting, sneaking across Night River to beg a heel of rye. His war council argued. Supplies dwindled to 3 weeks. When sunrise painted his tents the color of rust, he ordered catapults to fire at the city, only to watch stone shot crash harmlessly against outer walls hours after his deserters described breadlines of plenty. Within days, the High Sparrow delivered his next message. Faith militant would stand neutral between claimants so long as small folk were fed. Cersei replied with a single crate of barley flour stamped with her sigil, silent affirmation she intended more. Snow melted to sleet, sleet to drizzle. Blackwater's ice cracked, freeing Cersei's ferry lines. She shuttled 2,000 infantry across in fog. lion's paws in burnished half-plate. They dug trenches along riverbank, placed trebuchets salvaged from Maidenpool's ruins. Her banner flew beside the seven-pointed star, a lioness crowned by faith. Stannis attempted night assault upon her riverworks, but her crossbow core, invented by Qyburn's schematics, cut attackers down before they reached sharpened stakes. Bodies washed downstream past capital walls where beggars fishing for scraps saw parchment tags pegged to each corpse. Behold those who would starve you. Meanwhile, Jaime led a cavalry column up Rose Road, skirting Tyrell outposts to raid grain barns and torch hay meant for their war horses. The Tyrell foot at Bitterbridge broke, fleeing south when Golden Company outriders spread rumors 50,000 lions marched behind. In truth, her main host remained camped north of river, but fear marched faster than infantry. Cersei spent nights drafting edicts, taxes forgiven for capital artisans who returned to work, anointing the faith militant as provisional city guard, purchasing soot-black coal from Duskendale mines to warm orphan hostels. Each decree bore the seal of Seven and Lion entwined. One twilight, as bells tolled Compline across rain-soaked turrets, Ser Kevin entered her command tent with a parchment bearing broken stag wax. Stannis offered parley at the ruins of an old sept island mid-river. Safe conduct both sides, 2 companions each. Jaime urged caution. Kevin advised refusal. Morland volunteered to lead a hit squad disguised as envoys. Cersei shook her head. "I will meet him," she said. "Let the river witness whose claim flows stronger." At dawn gray as raw tin, she boarded a small barge with Jaime rowing one or Kevin the other. Mid-channel, the broken sept jutted from water like a shattered rib cage, its bell tower listing. Stannis waited upon cracked slate steps, 2 knights behind him, Ser Richard Horp and the Onion Knight Davos Seaworth. Iron flamed in Stannis's eyes. Beneath fur cowl, his gaunt cheeks betrayed sleepless nights. They faced each other upon rain-slick stone. River hissed around pylons. Gulls mocked overhead. "You come groomed as penitent," Stannis sneered, noting her rough robe still dusted by ash. "A costume cannot cleanse murder and treason." "Bread feeds more souls than sermons," Cersei replied. "King's Landing eats while your men chew grass." His jaw flexed. "My claim is lawful. Yours rests on incest and deceit." She spread hands. "Lawful dead kings feed no one, Lord Stannis. The throne demands more than parchments." Davos shifted uncomfortably. Jaime's gaze locked on Horp's hand. "Ready." Stannis stepped closer. "Withdraw your host across the river. Surrender the city to rightful rule. I will grant you exile to the rock and spare your son." He spat the last word with disdain. Cersei's laugh rang sharp, echoing among broken arches. "You speak as man starving tells banquet to surrender feast." She leaned in till rain dripped from her cropped hair onto his gorget. "Your siege rots like meat in summer. In a fortnight your lines will crumble. My convoys continue. My allies multiply. Your own knights whisper what your pride refuses to see." Stannis's gloved fist clenched on Lightbringer's pommel. "Pride is armor against falsehood. It is lead waiting a drowning man." She stepped back, voice cold. "I offer you terms, Stannis Baratheon. Disband your camp, swear fealty, and I'll appoint you warden of Shipbreaker Bay once more. Persist, and your men will hang over city walls." Each branded stag turned to carrion crow. The silence crackled with river fog. Stannis's nostrils flared. Lightbringer quivered as if wanting blood. At last he spoke, low and grim. "There is no mercy when truth is denied. We meet next by steel." He turned, striding toward his skiff. Davos cast Cersei an apologetic look. Half sorrow, half respect, then followed. Jaime exhaled. "Stubborn as ironwood," he muttered. Cersei watched Stannis's boat vanish into mist. "Ironwood burns hot once split." She pivoted, robe swirling. "We will split him." Back on the northern bank, she relayed orders. Build pontoon anchors quietly upriver to ferry cavalry across for a sweeping flank. Mine Stannis's southern ford with spiked caltrops. Leak rumor through captured scouts that Tyrell relief rides to break her siege instead. Confusion would eat his counsel from inside. Days passed in relentless preparation. Trebuchets bombarded Stannis' camp nightly with dead game carcasses and clay pots of dung to spread sickness. Faith militant discreetly admitted lion infantry in batches into the city's gate of the gods, replacing exhausted gold cloaks. Soon banners of the Seven and Lion hung beside each other atop wall turrets. Cersei entered the city herself one foggy dawn, hood pulled, to walk Flea Bottom's muddy lanes. Not one stone flew. Instead, gaunt women knelt, clutching loaves. Inside the Red Keep's throne room she found the Iron Throne draped in dust cloths, its hall echoing. She did not sit yet. She placed her palm on a spike of black iron, felt the chill seep. Soon, she promised. That evening ravens arrived from Lannisport. Euron's fleet sighted off harbor, holds bursting with wheat and salted herring. She ordered half rerouted to Duskendale for overland transport, half delivered directly to city. Another raven bore Fair Isle's sigil. 5 more longships completed, ready for river operations. The noose tightened. Stannis struck before it closed. On a moonless midnight, his sappers guided boats laden with wildfire barrels downstream, aiming to ram pontoons and ignite. But river currents shifted. Some whispered Davos himself cut anchor lines in doubt, sending craft drifting back into his lines. The explosion lit sky emerald. Tents erupted. Men screamed as green fire clung to mail. Chaos rippled. Cersei's scouts saw opportunity. She unleashed the cavalry strike pre-dawn. 800 horse crossing pontoon upstream, thundering into disordered camps. Jaime led the charge, golden hair glinting blood-red in torchlight. Lion banners snapped. Enemy pickets barely roused before hooves crushed them. Cersei observed from northern battlements through spyglass, breath catching as Lightbringer's glow danced amid smoke. Stannis wielding the blade himself while rallying a pocket of infantry. But every circle he formed collapsed under lances from all sides. Control slipped like water through cupped hands. By sunrise, Stannis' camp burned in 7 pyres stretching a mile. Survivors fled toward Stormland's trails, where snowdrifts and her skirmishers waited. Stannis himself escaped with a handful. Rumor claimed Davos dragged him to a boat after Lightbringer shattered on a lion shield. Cersei ordered horns sounded. Their notes boomed across river like dragon roar. City gates opened. Citizens poured onto northern embankment, weeping thanks. She rode across Causeway Bridge at high noon, cloak crackling, sword unbloodied but claim stronger than steel. Inside the city, Faith militant lined procession way, heads bowed. The High Sparrow himself met her at the September steps. "Grace suits those who wield it wisely," he murmured. "Grace feeds the flock," she answered. They exchanged looks draped in wary accord. The Red Keep's grand doors opened. Marble floors still smelled of faded incense and ash from riots. She walked that hall unhurried, Jaime and Kevin 10 paces behind, Morland and Boros flanking. High above, stained-glass dragons watched. She ascended dais steps. The Iron Throne stood austere, edges catching torchlight like latent fangs. Once she had coveted it, then feared its weight, then fled its shadow. Now she reached out, placed one foot upon the lower rung. No roar erupted, no angels sang. The hall's hush was thick enough to drink. She slowly turned, facing lords and common supplicants gathered beneath pillars. Faith brothers clutching star necklaces, former gold cloaks kneeling, scavenger children wide-eyed, older women pressing hands to mouths as if witnessing sunrise after endless night. Her next breath filled lungs with cool, dust-tinged air. She sat. Iron spikes pressed through rough robe into shoulders, sharp, but not unbearable. She rested gloved hands upon lionhead pommel bars. Jaime exhaled. Kevin dipped knee. The High Sparrow inclined head. Someone, perhaps Septa Nearia, began intoning a psalm of gratitude. But Cersei heard only her pulse, steady as drumbeats in deep caverns of the rock. She had fled the seat, marched west, forged allies from foes, fed the starving, shorn her pride in stone halls, and returned not with smooth silver crown but with scalp scarred by penance and heart steeled by fire. The lioness sat amid blades. Outside, bells pealed in rolling waves. Inside, She lifted chin and spoke a single command, voice carrying to every vaulted corner. "Bring my son." Footsteps echoed as nursemaids hurried off. Minutes later they returned bearing Aegon, cheeks rosy above crimson swaddling. She rose halfway, took him and seated again, the boy upon her lap. Tiny fingers clutched a blade's edge, but mother's hand shielded. "Behold your king," she proclaimed, though crownless yet. "A realm fed, a realm sheltered, a realm made whole shall name him so." She met eyes across hall. "And I, Cersei of House Lannister, shall hold this throne in trust until his hand can grip its steel." Silence broke in thunderous acclaim, voices of rich and wretched alike. Banners unfurled. Crossbowmen hammered butts on stone. Somewhere a child's laugh skipped across marble like thrown coin. In that clamor Cersei felt the rock's heartbeat, the sea's boom, the hush of September where hair fell, the crack of wildfire barrels. Every echo of her journey converging into a single note of triumph. Yet triumph is seed, not harvest. Outside gates, Tyrell riders massed on Rose Road. In east, dragons still circled distant skies. Faith zeal could pivot on whim. Allies were purchased with coin, loyalty with fear. The game stretched beyond horizons. But for this moment, steel throne bore her weight, and fear bent knee to bread. She stroked Aegon's hairless head, whispering so only he heard, "We are home, and the world will learn what the lioness keeps. She never yields." Torches flared, bells rang. Winter sunlight speared stained glass, gilding blades around her like halo of razors. Fitting crown for a queen who forged salvation from hunger and fire from ice. The war was not finished, but the city, the throne, the myth, these she possessed now more surely than iron. And somewhere, in a crypt of Casterly rock, stone lips of Tywin's effigy might almost curl, approving, at last, of a daughter who learned not merely to pay debts, but to collect them with interest measured in empires. Cersei closed her eyes one breath, felt the Iron Throne's bite, felt her son's warmth, felt the choir of triumph and the distant march of new storms. She opened them to the hall, to the world, to the future carved in lion's claw, and she smiled. The game would continue. She was ready,